Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered Edition has been highly anticipated by a segment of the gaming population. Many of us have fond memories grinding through the original on GameCube with our buddies. There was something special about each player having an extra private screen on their Game Boy Advance, each with a piece of the puzzle necessary for surviving the dungeons and getting loot. It's like a cross between an MMORPG and an action-adventure game. Sadly, the remaster is not the lovely stroll down memory lane we were hoping for, and somehow winds up being more cumbersome than ever. Let's jump in. Overall, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered Edition is a pretty faithful remake to the original GameCube title. It's a game where players get together and raid dungeons to acquire more and more loot to get upgrades to their stats. Additionally, to explore dungeons, the group needs to bring along the Crystal Chalice to keep the miasma at bay, limiting the space the party can take to a stage, and keeping the whole group from straying too far apart. Crystal Chronicles Remastered Edition parties can be formed among players over the internet, using a Nintendo Switch, a PlayStation 4, or a mobile device running Android or iOS. Crystal Chronicles lore is told mostly through stage introductions and road events, and it's surprisingly deep for those who want to delve into it. It's a story about people living their lives in a harsh and cruel world and thriving despite it all. Along with this story is a fantastic soundtrack. I'll be honest, I teared up hearing the theme song again. Crystal Chronicles was far ahead of its time when it released on GameCube, and a lot of games since then, like the mobile title Dragalia Lost, follow its dungeon raiding formula. Everything in the Remastered Edition plays how I remember it back in the day, with timed combo spells, frantic boss battles, and a little competition to see who gets first pick from the stage's artifacts. A number of us over at the Nintendo Enthusiast website were eager to review Crystal Chronicles Remastered, and Square Enix was generous enough to provide 2 review copies instead of the customary one. So we tested out co-op. We were looking forward to reliving one of the more interesting gaming experiences of our lives. However, it was a bit of a rude awakening. Crystal Chronicles Remastered is simply inconvenient to play with other people. Getting into a lobby with friends is unintuitive, and there's no way to learn how to do it within the game. Perhaps the game will get patched and add more information on how to do this, or Square Enix might publish a guide explaining the process, but it took us a solid 30 minutes to figure out how to play together. But with that said, maybe it'll be easier for you. Once you're in a dungeon, you have 30 pre-written messages to communicate with your team. This is nice, but there are times when you really need to get the timing of certain group spells down perfectly, or not have everyone walking off in different directions. The fact that players aren't sharing a TV screen like it was on GameCube makes this difficult. The lack of integrated voice chat makes it all the more frustrating. We did use Discord during our time playing it, but having in-game chat would have been much more convenient. When you finish a dungeon, only the host gets the myrrh for their Crystal Chalice. In fact, the host is the only one who gets to add the completed dungeon to their list, essentially advancing their game, but no one else's. The other players will get their items and upgrades, but in order for them to play through the game on their own console, everyone will have to replay through the dungeon up to 4 times, which makes it a repetitive and watered-down experience. There's a quick play option that lets you play with random people over the internet, but unfortunately, because the game isn't out yet, I wasn't able to connect with more than one person at any given time. But considering the lack of real communication, I probably wouldn't want to play like that anyway. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles also has some bizarre design choices. Road events are random, and while they serve to flesh out the game's world, their frequency can be obnoxious. What's weird is there's a lot of obvious quality of life tweaks that weren't implemented, which makes me wonder if the development team spent most of their time and resources getting the online functionality and crossplay into a working state. And lastly, one final complaint: you can't merge towns or utilize other players' shops, which once again is just an inconvenient thing. In 2004, people built up their characters and town as a group. They gathered supplies under one roof, and there was a sense of accomplishment with every boss defeated and each drop of myrrh gained. Despite its crossplay, online functionality, and overall focus on connecting with others, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered Edition often feels incredibly lonely. The original was a game that rewarded players for playing with friends, but this Remastered Edition is frustrating and inconvenient if you want to enjoy it with others. It's sad sad because Crystal Chronicles is still a fun game with a deep story and interesting mechanics. But if you're gonna play it in 2020, I still recommend the unconventional co-op on GameCube, as it's still the best way to experience Crystal Chronicles. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you didn't, hit that thumbs down. And if you're feeling really generous, hit that subscribe button and maybe even that notifications bell if you want to be alerted for every review, reaction, or news that I post on the channel. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.